This is the Simply Home podcast, Ladies Who Build, a podcast for women by women. This is Ashley Wainscott
and Michelle Mullins. After spending the last 10 years revolutionizing the construction industry and raising the bar of the contracting world, we are inviting you on our journey as we continuously learn how to be extraordinary and thrive in this industry. Now come hang with us.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 26 of the Ladies Who Build podcast. Today we are talking about a very fun topic about what do you do when you have hired a bad contractor? What would be your next steps to take? So this is a really important topic because we still experience, unfortunately today, clients that come to us that have had bad situations in the past with contractors and ways that they have tried to mitigate those problems. And a lot of them are very legitimate concerns and kind of how we deal with those. But you might be going through a similar situation, or you know someone who might be going through a similar situation. And there are some key questions and actions you can take to hopefully remedy this situation. Some key points we're going to be covering are what would be the red flags and what are not the red flags, and what would be a concern, what's not a concern. Expectations of the word perfection, what it really means in construction, how to work through a tough situation, how to talk to a contractor, how to have really open conversations with them. And we'll also share what it's like from our perspective of having different situations with this and with different types of clients, and that it's not necessarily all bad. So, all right, let's dive in. There's a lot to cover.
There's so much to cover. I liked that you said that there are action items and like what the remedy is, because I think that's exactly what we're going to do is like dive in and figure out what the problem is. And that's like putting on our diagnosis hat, like what do you consider to be bad? Because Michelle and I were talking about this, and there are actual bad contractors, but when you're in this situation, what are you considering bad?
Right. And bad does not equal the same thing for everybody.
No, every person is so different.
Yeah.
It's like, is it actual bad quality work, or is it an unreasonable expectation of work that is completed by humans that will not be completely perfect? And is it something where a contractor is constantly not delivering on time and they're making promises that they're not keeping, but overall the job is going well? So overall you have like high integrity? Or is it a situation where you can't believe anything that they say? Everything that comes out of their mouth feels like a lie because they never honor any of their commitments. So is it that kind of integrity issue? Is it pricing? Right? Is it like they keep coming back and asking for more money?
Yeah, yes, all of those things could be true. I think like in the beginning, starting out, what you said was, do you trust your contractor? Because, to your point, there's a lot of hands that are working on this project, right? And so as the project manager's job, it's to wrangle all those together, make sure that they're delivering on time and communicating to the client. So in that, something might be missed, and that's okay. You like having an honest conversation about it of, hey, this got missed. Okay, we're going to remediate it. And it's not going to happen again. So is it those things that are happening? Because what we talked about earlier is that's not necessarily bad. That's kind of just part of the process. And sure, communication can be stepped up, right? Like things don't get missed more often than not, right? So those things are true. But if it's consistently, like you said, happening where promises are not being kept and they say they're going to fix it at a certain time, they're going to fix it and it still doesn't get done, but consistently happening over and over and over again, that's a red flag, right? And so it's a concern that that's kind of how they're operating. And they're over promising and under delivering. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to address that and bring it up with your contractor in person to say, I see that this is happening over and over again. What's the issue? I'm losing trust. Help me out here. What's going to be the solution, you know?
So that would be step one then.
Right.
Like,
That's how I'm thinking, linear here.
the conversation is step one.
Yeah.
Have the conversation. And there are so many clients I can think of, Michelle, that are courageous enough to come to us and be super transparent. And then there's so many clients I can think of that avoided confrontation and would either completely not say anything, but you could tell there was an elephant in the room, or they would tell their designer or a third party that would have to come and tell us, and then we'd have to start the conversation. And I get that. Like, not everybody wants to have that kind of conversation. I totally get that. But I feel like to help someone understand where you're coming from or what your issues are, and to give your contractor the opportunity to address them, then you have to bring it up, because how else are they going to have the opportunity to apologize and attempt to address them if you don't bring it up?
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to make the conclusion that you've hired a bad contractor, now what? Then that step has to be taken. I mean, you have to address all these things up front with your contractor and give them a chance to fix it, or show you how they're going to fix it, or whatever the case is. Because if you don't give them that, then you can't, I mean, what are you going to do? You're just going to walk away and fire them? Like, that's going to cause way more pain and suffering for you in the long run. And so, and it might have to come to that. We're not saying you have to be forced into this relationship if it's totally not going well, but at least give them the opportunity to address it and fix it. And then, of course, if they don't and it continues to happen, then there's some recourse you can take, right? There's some future actions to be made.
Yeah. And is the grass greener on the other side?
No.
Like, is it, I feel like most
Right.
of the time it's probably no. There's going to be some situations where someone is clearly stealing your money and they're never going to show up to your job site again. And that I feel like you would know in your gut, this is a bad situation and I need to remedy this and move on. But for most situations, there's some reasonable like margin, so whether it's like timeline. So, okay, sure, they told you your project would be done on this date. It's been a few weeks, but things came up on the project. Maybe they didn't communicate things how you would want them to, right? So I feel like there's some margin that's reasonable. Obviously, if somebody's taking like 6 months to do a bathroom remodel that's simple, or 6 months to do a kitchen remodel and they told you to, then that's a bigger issue. That's not the margin I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of just like a smaller margin.
Yeah. I think of it as like, is there progress consistently being made? Right? Because at the end of the day, the contractor wants to be done. You want to be done with the project. Like, nobody wants to drag on a project. Everybody wants to get paid and move on. But, I think we've been in situations where, yes, we have gone over timeline, but first we've communicated them. But also our biggest thing was to our project managers on the back end was like, if we're over timeline, you have to consistently have something done every single day at that house. Even if it's small, it needs to show that we're showing progress and that we're all like, this is really important to finish up. Right. So that's a different story than taking, months and months to finish up something that's very basic, like you said, a bathroom remodel. And so I think, but again, like all of that just goes back to communications and expectations. So if your contractor's not great at giving those, a lot of them are not, then you can take it upon yourself to set those. And yes, maybe you have to do a little bit more handholding because you're in a situation where it wasn't great in the beginning, but at least it's following up of are we doing this today, or when is this getting done, and kind of just keeping a record of what's left.
Yeah. The dedication is huge. When somebody's showing effort, then I feel like, I mean, it's kind of like a relationship, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
can't feel like you're putting in all the effort and the other person isn't. Obviously, it has to feel 50-50. And that, I mean, that's kind of what it should feel like here, in that it should feel like they're really putting in effort. Maybe things aren't going as planned. Maybe they're not doing the best job in a lot of ways, but being understanding if they're truly doing their best is honestly the best thing that you can do, because they may not be great, but are they like bad?
Right.
And it could be worse. I mean, our industry just has such an extreme of like either really good or really bad. And the
Mm-hmm.
really bad are like thieves and people that belong in prison. And so in that range, when you get somebody that's kind of medium, it's like you might as well just stick it out and work through it, depending on what the issues are, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
might take years off your life, but like,
It's taking years off ours.
yeah. Michelle and I, like, imagine how youthful our skin would look if we,
We're in this industry.
right? I was trying to think of a graceful way to say it. I'm like, if we chose another path.
Yeah. Or,
Or if
yeah.
we just didn't clean like condos and do
Mhm.
vendors' jobs for them when they didn't show up.
Right. It would be a much better world. I think, yeah. So, and I think in addition to kind of another red flag that would be concerning is like what you mentioned earlier is like, are they continually asking for more money, but you're A, not seeing progress, or B, you're not showing a rundown of what they're charging you for. So, we always tell people some people need money down to buy materials. And so that is okay. But what I would request, especially if you don't know them or if you're maybe on the fence about who they are, I would always ask for like an invoice of those materials. And it doesn't, if it's not from the factory or the company, so be it, that's fine. But you need an invoice then from the vendor to show how much your material line item cost is, and then how much is your labor. So if they're charging you $20,000 for cabinetry and, full kitchen cabinetries, well, so what if that is materials? Oh, okay. Well, it's, I don't know, $10,000, whatever. Okay, great. So I'm going to pay you $10,000 and that's going to be material, right? When is that material going to be in? Oh, next week. So you can kind of gauge like when they're going to start having that stuff in. And then I would not pay for any labor that you have not seen completed, right? They don't need labor money up front. It doesn't happen. If they need money to pay their guys, that's on them up front. So if you have paid for labor up front and they say that they have to have it to pay their guys and you've already been there, fine. But make sure that the work that they are saying is going to completed for that amount has 100% can be completed, and you've walked through it to say, this is acceptable, I like it, or make these few tweaks and we're good to go. Then you can give another draw. But I think that's where people get into the most hot water situations we've heard is, and people just don't know, and that's okay, but they just don't know that they don't really need all that money up front, and they give them way too much and then they run away with it.
They really, yeah. The financial piece of all of this, when people give up too much money, I'm like, but that's your card. That's your upper hand, if you will, as a client, is the money. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and we both know contractors in general are motivated by money. So that's the way in which you can really get them to move through a process of like, I will give you this when this is completed, or I will give you this next payment when this is completed. And that's really what they're there for, is the money.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we still do with our contractors today is like, you show me what's done, give me an invoice for that, I'll go check it, and then I'll pay you. I mean, that's still to this day. And like, we work with a lot of vendors that we trust and love, and we'll give them the down payment they need because we know that they're legitimate and they're real we know what they're going to come through with it. But for most of our guys, no, they have to do the work and then they have to show we check it that it's been completed. So yeah.
It's true. And these are people we even trust. So I'd go back to like, do you trust them? Why or why not? Have you conveyed that to them? And of course, you have to be honest. If you don't trust someone, you have to tell them,
right?
And why. And sometimes people are even surprised because they'll get a referral for their contractor from their neighbor, and they'll be like, but my neighbor had the best experience, and now I'm having the worst experience, and they're not showing up for me, and they're confused and bummed. But
right.
I mean, you and I both know contractors aren't the most organized. And so just because they're showing up on your job also not being organized, that may not be because they're sketchy. It may just literally mean because they've taken on way too much on their plate and they can't get organized, or they left their tool at another house and they planned on getting it done, today, and now they have to wait till tomorrow. And this stuff happens all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So it may not be that they're trying to actually rip you off. They're just maybe really unorganized.
They're just disorganized. Yeah. And like, we've worked with those guys too, but they produce such good work that I'm like, I'll just be organized for you because I want you to do the work. But you a hot mess on the back end,
Right. Like, we all know you're a hot mess. We're not going to let the client see that, but we all know you're a hot mess.
Right.
Yeah. So then you also had pointed out earlier and had on here about when it's actually a concern is drinking and drug use on the job.
Yeah.
And no one should be drinking on your job site because that's a huge liability. Like,
huge.
I mean, I make some really dumb decisions when I drink, and I can't imagine if I were operating a tool.
No, it's like not okay. Yeah.
I mean, I want all my limbs. So like, I don't
right.
I want them all.
Right.
So then you would talk to them. Depending on how many times you have to have this conversation, it probably has to happen multiple times, right? Because not everybody will get on the same page after one conversation. And then if it just continues to escalate, then it looks more like, okay, do you need to bring in someone else? What does terminating look like? Do you have an agreement with them? Is there a way in which they can finish out certain work that you trust them with, or do you want them completely off your job? What can that transition look like? If it's something where you very much don't trust them, then you should obviously change the locks or, terminate it in a very professional way and then hire somebody else, depending on how deep you are into the financial hole.
Yeah. And I think with this too, I'm not saying this like as a 100% true statement, but before you hire someone else to do the work that you had already contracted this person to do, you also can't expect anybody to give you money back, right? Like, I would love to say that a contractor would be honest and say, you're right, I didn't complete that work. You did pay me for that work. Here's your money back. But in all reality, they're probably not going to give you that money back. And so if you have paid them a substantial amount for work that they have still needing to complete, what you could do is take away a section of that you haven't paid them for. So let's say it's like finish out, right? Like installing the vanity toilet. I'm just thinking like a bathroom remodel. You could hold that reserve and say, listen, you know what? I think I'm going to probably get the rest of this work completed with someone else. But anything that you've already paid them for, I would try to push for them to go ahead and complete. Because I just don't think asking for their money back. I mean, it's different if it was us. Like, obviously, if we didn't do work, we'd be like, sure, obviously, no problem. But the majority of guys are not going to be willing to give you any money back.
No.
Sad to say, but
not individual contractors, because honestly, they most likely have spent it or it's not something that they're willing to let go of and just be like, sure, here's all the money.
Yeah.
I mean, they kick and scream when you ask them for money back. If any of our guys have ever made a mistake on a job or caused timeline delays and they therefore owe us money, we usually have to get that money back by them working on another project. They're not going to hand over money. So I think that's a
It's
good
so
point
rare.
that
Yeah.
you should have them finish the work if that's something that's still doable for you. And you're not past that point of the deal breaker. Obviously handle this before you're at your breaking point, because when you're at your breaking point, you're not going to be emotionally stable or logical or rational. And Michelle and I have been there many times as a homeowner or a, general contractor that manages other vendors. We've been there many times where we aren't at the place to have a rational conversation anymore or to think about this rationally. And that's when like a spouse can step in and be really beneficial. Michelle, we should talk about our experiences with the clients who want perfection.
Okay. Where should we begin?
Those clients should not ever hold a reel of blue tape.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay, so typically we can tell what clients are going to be a little bit more demanding or have a little bit more of a judgmental eye towards the work, right? So we would not give that person a roll of blue tape. What we would do is do a walkthrough with them. So we can walk through to say, yes, this is a reasonable thing that needs to be touched up. I'm in agreement with you. Or that's pretty standard. It's not going to get better than that. You're probably going to make it worse if we start messing with it. Because how many times, well, not how many times, but remember the times when we walked into a house and you can't even see the paint on the walls because there's so much blue tape markings on them.
So much blue. I mean, it was like a polka dot blue tape world. And I'm like, do I need to get my eyes checked, or am I seeing this? Is this what I'm seeing?
And they're like so serious. You walk in and their face is like, sorry, I did the walkthrough. I'm like, oh yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
Yeah. And sadly, they spent hours on it, right?
Yeah.
Thinking, and this is back in the day more so when Michelle and I didn't have like expectations or standards of work and performance that we'd preset with clients. So I will put that disclaimer on it. But now there's a standards of work performance where it's like, if you can't see something with paint 6 feet back from a wall, then it doesn't qualify for a touch up. But back then, I mean, clients would be up against the wall or crawling on the floor, blue taping things. And that's what we're here to say is that's not reasonable. Because all of this is hand done work. There's nothing that is going to be completely perfect. And especially in a remodel, right? I'm not saying new builds, you should expect perfection either. But we're a remodel, we're just usually building off of what was there in a lot of cases. And it's all hand done. This is not like we're not using like the robot machine, whatever that company is here in Austin, that builds the 3D homes and things. That's an actual robot. We're not robots that I know of.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I'm really taken aback here. This is a trip thinking about some of these projects. But yeah, we do have that expectation ahead of time for sure. But, at the end of the day, like you are not going to walk into your bathroom and crawl on your hands and knees and look at that tile no, you're going to be standing. Typically a 6-foot man and below is going to be standing looking at the floors when you walk in every day, right? So you are not going to see these little minuscule things that you're going to only see like up front at the certain hour of the day with a flashlight showing on it. Oh, here it is. It's like, you're just not going to see it. So yeah, there's just definitely expectations. And I really appreciate when clients ask, like they'll say, a realistic thing I should be asking for? Or what do you think? Because we're going to be totally honest with you. Like, if we're going to be like, yeah, I would, if this was my home, 100%, I would get this fixed and we're going to fix it for you. We're going to tell you straight up, because leaving a project looking good is our number one priority because, well, among others, but because we want to leave a lasting impression. So when your friends walk in and they say, wow, your bathroom remodel is stunning. Who did your work? We want you to be proud to say us. We don't want them to walk in and be like, oh my gosh, who did your work? So leaving quality work is massive for us. So why would we want anything less? But we will tell you honestly, like, hey, that's just standard industry. It is what it is. Or, yeah, that's not great. Let's fix that.
Yeah, Michelle and I are the first, and our team are the first to be like, no, that is not okay. Let us come in
Mm-hmm.
here and fix this, this, and this. Or, hey, wanted you to know we found this. We're going to fix this. We also have standards, and we also have to sleep at night.
Yeah, we have standards.
And I don't want to be embarrassed by a shower we did.
Yeah, of course. No, that's like, so we are very particular, and we'll tell clients sometimes, like, even they don't see things, and we'll say, hey, we're really not happy with the way that this turned out. Like, whatever it is, like a one tile or whatever. Hey, I don't really I like how this turned out. I'm going to go ahead and get it replaced. And a lot of times clients are like, oh, I didn't even see that. Like, thanks for bringing that to my attention. So there are things that we handle even if you don't see them.
It is true. Yes, we do. There are many things we catch in the background. And I
Yeah.
think even, I know this podcast is, we're talking more about, you hired a bad contractor. What do you do? And this perspective where Michelle and I are talking about being the contractor for a remodeling firm, right? A little bit different than just a vendor or contractor on their own. But we're sharing this perspective because I think it's always nice to have a well-rounded view of what it's like to be the contractor on the other side of it. So if you're in this situation, hopefully we can share some insight into, what it's like being us on the other side. And Michelle and I have always appreciated having a conversation and having that opportunity. We've always appreciated having, I guess the best word is the opportunity to create a plan forward, and really so we can hear the client and try to meet their expectations, or at least communicate what's reasonable and what isn't. And, reiterate standards of work, reiterate performance standards, reiterate our processes. And that's why we have these weekly meetings, is we always want the opportunity to address something as it comes up. And the real trick of it is having reasonable expectations for when things come up that are unforeseen, right? Like a vendor has a personal emergency, a vendor can't make it, something comes up on the job site that we couldn't see in the walls. I think all of the best clients we've worked with have had that margin where they understand what it's like to be reasonable, and they can relate to the contractor and say, like, oh, I know this must not be easy. I know they're having to reschedule all these things. I know they're doing their best. Like, keeping our best interest in mind, just like we keep your best interest in mind, is important for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think also, if you're on the other end of it too, where you haven't hired a contractor and you're trying to figure out how to hire them or what questions to ask, we did do an episode on this in the beginning. So I would definitely go back and listen to it if you're on the other end of it about to hire someone, so you can like ask like really legitimate questions.
Yeah, and then you could mitigate this, and you don't have to
Yeah.
contractor.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Here we are. We're just saving the world, wearing our hero capes.
Yeah. One episode at a time.
My hero cape fits perfectly today.
Okay. Well, perfectly doesn't exist, so.
It is. I made it from blue tape.
Yeah.
With all the blue tape on all the walls, I put it together.
Yeah. My gosh. Yeah. True stories for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was like the high level. If there is anything that you listening to this are going through or have gone through and have questions and we haven't addressed it, please reach out and let us know, because we most likely have a good answer for it. So we'd love to hear if anybody y'all are going through this and if there's anything that we can do to help. We've helped clients that have called us that aren't using us for a certain job and have asked us what to do with their contractor in a situation. And I totally loved helping in that situation, because I just don't ever want to see someone get taken advantage of. So no biggie. We don't mind.
So true. I do love helping everyone, even if they're not our client. Y'all should absolutely reach out and let us know if there's a weird situation that we can try and help, give advice or our insights on.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Until next time.
Adios.
Now that you are hooked to the podcast, you are probably thinking, how can I learn more? Well, sign up for our monthly newsletter to see our newest remodels and the best tips for a stress-free home renovation.
With a few easy clicks, you will get to go even more in depth with us as we go behind the scenes with life, projects, and our team. Go to simplyhome.co for the show notes to sign up. See you next time. Bye, y'all.